At an early preview, a man came up to me and he said, "Is your show Chatterbox based on the film Chatterbox?" And I had no idea that there was a film called Chatterbox. I got in and I Googled it. Such a film does exist. It's American. It was made in 1977. It's not available on DVD, which gives you a fair indication of the quality of the thing. And the film Chatterbox is about a woman with a talking vagina. So that man who came up to me must have thought it was going to be a live stage version. He must have walked in and gone, "Well, that microphone stands too high for a start." But I have managed to get a hold of the film on video, proper old school, and I've only seen the first 2 minutes, but I've already decided that it's brilliant. In the first 2 minutes, a man and a woman have sex. They finish. She says something like, "That was lovely." This doesn't sound very American, does it? I can't really do accents. I've made it sound more Geordie than it actually was, haven't I? "That was champion, pet." That's what I say after sex. Unless it wasn't champion, I'm no fucking liar. So she's relatively positive about the experience, and then her vagina goes, "It was all right." How many times have you wanted to say that? "It'll do. I'll do it properly on my own later on, don't worry." The women are laughing and the blokes are doing this. This is gonna be shit. I stopped buying women's magazines. About 6 months ago, I stopped buying women's magazines because it feels like there's nothing in there for me. I might as well be buying a magazine about yachts. There's just nothing in there for me. Why would I buy anything where the only time I ever see anybody who looks a bit like me is underneath the word before? Magazines always maintain that they're about improving women's lives, and it's bullshit because they never tell you just to see your friends more often or to read more books. It's always the physical things that we're supposed to do to ourselves, and the list of those things is quite ridiculous. You can have your eyebrows waxed, your eyelashes tinted, your skin darkened, your teeth lightened, manicures, pedicures, cleansed, toned and moisturised. I'm 38, I've cleansed, I've moisturised. I've no idea what toning actually is. Does anybody give us a woo if you do? A few of you. Does anybody shout out what it is? No. I'll woo, but I'm not explaining it to her. Like makeup, I like wearing makeup, I like wearing it on stage, I like wearing it if I go out somewhere nice, but I don't think I need to wear it all the time, and I don't think I look weird if I don't have any on. I still don't really understand why I paint over naturally rosy cheeks to then apply rosy cheeks. Like, hair removal is a whole subject all on its own, isn't it? There's so many different ways, especially as women, that we can remove our hair. You can wax, you can shave, you can pluck, you can epilate. My sister had laser treatment, which is supposed to be permanent. She had it to her underarms. It was quite painful and quite expensive. And after 2 months, the whole lot just grew back in. Which is terrible, but does go some way to explaining why James Bond was always so nonchalant when a laser was aimed at his cock and balls. Come back in a couple of months, man, I'll be champion. Realise I've made James Bond a Geordie. Maybe that's the future. Few cheers for a James Bond that's Geordie, how nice. But according to women's magazines, there are only 2 options for hair down there for women. One of my friends said to me recently, she said, "You know why women are supposed to have hair down there, don't you?" And I said, "Is it like your nose, so you don't get muck up it?" And she said, "No." She said, "Women are supposed to have hair down there so that nature knows where your reproductive bits are." I said, "Why does nature need to know? Surely as long as me fella's got a rough idea. Why do all the deers and the rabbits need to know?" Well, maybe the rabbits. Actually, as an aside, I should tell you this. I did recently treat myself to a new and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's only got the 1 speed, which I think a lot of people in this room would be like, 1 speed? That sounds rubbish. You know what the speed is? Fucking hell yes, that's the speed. Any vibrator that needs a square battery is already fine by me. problem, if you can call it that, the problem with it being so fast and efficient is that I can't always get a scenario going in my head. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? You know what I fucking mean. Because normally, I'd be like this. Not out loud, I don't do it out loud. I'm just doing it for you. But normally I'd be like this. He walks in the room. He's wearing a suit. I like him to have a job. There's nothing wrong with that. But with the new one, it's much more like this. There's a knock at the done. I tell you what it is. What it actually is an electric toothbrush with a special end. Just feel the need to share it with you. The information. I didn't bring it with us. Just work it along the aisles, girls. But even though it's a toothbrush, I don't use it as a toothbrush because I'm nervous in case I get the ends mixed up. And accidentally take all the plaque off me nunny. When I was in a shop and this little boy came running over, maybe about 5-year-old, came running over, put his hand in mine and shouted, "Mommy!" And I thought, ooh, I sometimes forget me keys, but I think I'd remember that. And then his dad came over and I thought, wonder if this is like the best chat-up line ever. And his dad's gonna go, no, that's not your mammy. Remember, your mammy left us because my willy's too big. But I had to go to family planning just before Christmas. Oh my God. I was the oldest by 20 years. I was mortified. And the lady said, "Do you want some free condoms while you're here?" And I thought, out for out. Just before Christmas, probably use them as stocking fillers or something. And she said, "Would you like flavoured ones?" And I thought, yeah, bugger, this is advanced compared to when I used to go. And I said, "Look, love, I'm 35. The only flavour I'd want the condom to taste of is cock." Apparently they don't do those. So I had to settle for our two most popular lines, which were Lambrini and Greg's Pasties. But Pretty Woman for me is one of those films. I think we've all got one of those films where even if you've got the DVD, which means technically you could watch it any time you liked, if it's on the telly, you're watching it. And that's one of mine, and it was on not too long ago on ITV 2+1 × 4. And you know that scene, even if you haven't seen the film, you know the classic scene where she goes back into the shop that wouldn't serve her, and she says, "You work on commission, big mistake, huge." And I thought that film would have been totally different if she'd been a size 18, wouldn't it? Because I'm a size 18 and pretty much guarantee I couldn't get in any designer clothes. I worried about getting stuck in the fucking cubicles, let alone the clothes. She'd have gone back in and gone, "You work on commission?" "Well, I've ordered some things online. And I don't know if they're going to fit. So I bought a handbag to cheer myself up. And I filled it with fucking Maltesers." I started buying women's magazines. I quite like women's magazines. And I bought one recently because on the front cover it said that some female celebrities had put weight on and that they were now curvaceous. I thought, let's have a look and just see how curvaceous they are. So I flicked through, and the fattest woman in there, it said that she had ballooned. I repeat, she had ballooned to a size 12. Size 12. I give my right arm to be a size 12. My right arm might be a size 12. But I've discovered the most horrific way you know you've put weight on. I don't think this is commonly known, so I feel like I should sort of spread the word. This happened to me in January, and it is genuinely upsetting. Where my boyfriend lives is a block of flats, and round the back of the block of flats is a car park. In order to get into the car park, you have to go through like a barrier, like an arm that lifts up when it senses a car is near. I mean, I was carrying 2 big bags of shopping, but it still thought I was a Peugeot 206. But a friend of mine... actually, no, I'm not going to call him that. It's not appropriate. I'm going to call him a male acquaintance. Let's do that. A male acquaintance of mine with whom I have never had a dalliance said to me, "You know what? If you lost a couple of stone..." I said, "The rest of this better be a fucking equation." if you lost a couple of stone, we could probably go out. I said, only if the couple of stone I lost was me fucking head. It's lovely to be here, though. It's a nice temperature in here, isn't it? We'll get warmer as we go on, obviously, the lights and whatnot. I respond in quite a peculiar way to the heat, I think, mostly sort of here. I realised I aimed that just at you guys in the front there, didn't I? Sorry about that. Hey, upstairs can have a go. There you go. Down there gets what I call claggy. Anybody else got a good word for that? Anybody else? Moist. Who said moist? Moist is a good word. What was that one? Sticky. There was a lady the other day said, what you've got there is LDF. I said, what does LDF stand for? She said, long day Fanny. When I said claggy and Preston, a man said, oh no, we call that ready. But what I do when it gets moist and sticky, I just do a plie. I'm not a massive belly dancer, but if I was a belly dancer, I would clearly be a massive one. I just do that. You only get a couple of seconds relief because it mostly just slicks back together. I did a show in Edinburgh and a lady at the back of the room shouted out, you need to use some talc. And I thought, surely that just forms a paste. But I don't worry anymore about the fact that I can't really see me fanny. Just thought if my fanny or all fannies make you feel quite sick, sir. Is it my fanny in particular? You're just not a big fan of fannies? You're not a fan of fannies. I've got some cock stuff later on, you'll fucking love that. I don't need to say me fanny anymore anyway, because I've got people for that now. Well, person. People sounds bad, doesn't it? Well, there's two. It's a job share. I can't see me fanny because of me belly, but I can't see me belly because of me tits. Hooray! As long as they stay, I'm all right. If they go, I'm fucked. Well, probably less so. I went for a medical assessment recently, nothing serious, quite a standard medical assessment, just sort of height and weight and blood pressure and heart rate, that sort of thing. But I wasn't really looking forward to the weight bit because I don't have scales at home, I don't believe in them. I do have kitchen scales now, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't weighed anything of myself in them. Left one's heavier, interesting. But I don't have bathroom scales. I don't think it's healthy. Why would I do something every day that makes me feel a bit shit? So I do instead. I think a lot of people do this. It's a much healthier way of doing it. You just judge it on your clothes, don't you? Judge it on your clothes, and then when your clothes start getting a bit tight, you think, well, maybe it's time I went out and bought bigger clothes. So I told the doctor I wasn't really looking forward to the weight, but he said, we still have to do it. I said, no, I understand. I'm just trying to think of a way to make it a bit more fun. And he said, well, what do you suggest? I said, well, how about this? Simple as this. How about I guess my own weight? And he said, OK, we can do that. So I guessed my own weight, and I got it right, and I was fucking thrilled. And he just went, nobody's ever been that happy about being that weight before. Which I thought was a little mean, so I said back, perhaps too loudly. And also, I don't know where this came from. It just fell out of my mouth. I just went, it's more important to be right than to be thin. Feels like I might have read it on a T-shirt. I don't know where that came from, but if that's going to be my mantra, that's quite a good mantra, isn't it? It's much better than what Kate Moss said. I don't know if you know this. Kate Moss, the model, said, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Let me just say that to you again so it can probably sink in all of your heads. She said, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I thought, well, she's obviously never had millionaire shortbread, has she? And my response to her would be, nothing looks as good as not being a cunt. My friend invited me around for tea. She said, come round to mine, I'm going to cook all your favourite food. That's what a lovely thing to do for somebody. So, of course, I went. A couple of hours later, I was sitting on the sofa putting the world to rights. And she blurted out, just out of nowhere, she blurted out, I don't think my lady parts look like other girls' lady parts. What the fuck am I supposed to do with that? I realised the whole night had been a ploy. Favourite foods by us. Come and look at me, Fanny. I said, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at it. But if you draw it on a bit of paper, I'll have a look at that. So she drew it on a bit of paper and I drew mine as well and we compared them. And they were very similar, so she was much happier. She said mine was tidier. I don't really know what that means. But I know I definitely don't want to look at hers now that I know that it's messy. But it could have been worse than drawing on a bit of paper. I could have just put some paint on and done a potato print. Sometimes I wouldn't even need the paint. But according to women's magazines, there are only 2 options for hair down there for women. The options are all off or most off. Give us a cheer if you think all off is the way to go. Is that a filler in the middle of that there? It's not technically aimed at you, love. I suppose it is good to know we've got a paedophile in. That's what it means, that's what it means. Give us a cheer if you think most off is the way to go. Still quite a lot of you left, isn't there? Can only assume that the rest of you are like me. I just try to keep it in me pants. Even if sometimes that involves tucking it in. But surely the most ridiculous of all of the things we are supposed to do to ourselves is anal bleaching. Now, some of you might not know what that is. If you don't know what it is, it's exactly as it sounds. Some people, and I don't know why, I can't answer that question for you, some people choose to have their arseholes bleached. As far as I'm concerned, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexuality, if somebody is so close to your arsehole that they can see the colour of it, they're not going to stop. This is never going to happen. Smack! Smack! Oh, sorry, love, I don't do that colour. It's warm now, isn't it? But I love a slogan on a knicker. I love a slogan on a knicker. The best slogan I ever had, it said, I do anything for love, and on the back, but I won't do that. I mean, it was written on in biro, but still. But I went into Marks and Spencer's recently, tried some clothes on, and the same thing happens that always happens when you try clothes on in there. The lady took the clothes off us that I wanted to try on, she hung them on the rail, she gave us the tag, she swished the curtain, all very normal so far. But as she swished the curtain, her parting shot, she said, just give us a shout if you need any bigger sizes. So I swished it back just as quickly and went, I think you'll find you mean different, you bitch. But while I was in Marks, I went to the lingerie department. In the lingerie department, they had a stretchy, lacy, all-in-one kind of body stocking type of thing, presumably for sort of sexy time. I can't imagine any actual practical use. Maybe straining vegetables. And on the bottom of the packaging, it said, one size fits most. That clearly used to say fits all. You've got to pity the poor woman who had to go in and go, you need to change your packaging, pet. It doesn't fit all. It's still on one leg.